Shalom, everyone. So, I wanted to do a message about how to deal with enemies in a righteous way. And I'm doing this as a continuation of the Compass of Your Heart series. I've already done the first message a while back, Heavenly Help. If you want to watch that, feel free. But this message is about enemies and how to deal with your enemies in a righteous way. Because the fact of the matter is if you're trying to live your life righteously and on the correct path, you're going to have enemies who will try to stop you or just be a nuisance along the way. So this message is about how to deal with your enemies in a righteous way, and so that they will either leave you alone or they won't be enemies. So I'll delve right into this, and I'm going to talk about just a few enemies that David has had over the course of his life, mostly after he was crowned king and before he was, after he was anointed king, but before he was actually crowned king sitting on the throne. So first I'll talk about his older brother, Eliab. And if you turn with me to 1 Samuel chapter 17, verse 28, this is at the battlefield where Goliath was taunting all the soldiers of Israel who were cowering in fear. And so David comes down to the battlefield as instructed by his father. His father instructed him, take this food down to your brothers so that they can, fight the battle. So when he was there, his oldest brother Eliab said to him very angrily, why did you come down here? With whom did you leave those few sheep in the wilderness? Now think about this. People who are too afraid to fight the battle will try to rebuke you for trying to fight the battle as well. Because Eliab was sitting on the sidelines. He wasn't fighting in the battle. He wasn't the one to slay Goliath. David was. So, and also consider this too. Just a chapter earlier, we saw Samuel anoint David as king. He passed over Eliab first, passed over 7 of his brothers, but it was David that he anointed king, the runt of the litter, so to speak. So Eliab, he had a bit of a chip on his shoulder, and it's understandable. But still of all, he was cowering in fear on the sidelines of the battle. So, and then he continues, this is Eliab speaking, he says, I know your pride and your naughtiness of heart, for you came down to watch the battle. Now think about this too. People who don't really know you, the real you, they'll accuse you of things that you're not, and they'll accuse you of things that are not true. So just be encouraged by that, because Yah knows the real you. Yah knows who you are. He looks at your heart, not the outside, not the countenance of your appearance. So I'll call this tactic number 1. Tactic number 1, how to deal with your enemies. Just because someone throws a ball to you, it does not mean you have to catch it. David did not answer Eliab. He just asked someone else, and someone else, and someone else, until he got the answers he wanted. What was going on the battlefield. So, point is sometimes you just don't answer, or you don't have to answer in kind, and that's what David did. So, the next enemy that David had was Goliath, and this is 1 Samuel chapter 17, verse 45. David said to Goliath, he said, you come to me with sword, spear, and shield, but I come to you in the name of Yah, the God of the armies of Israel. Now, think about this. Sometimes Yah is all you have, but he's always all you need. Now, continue on in verse 46. And all this assembly will know that Yah saves not with sword and with spear, for the battle is his, and he will give you into our hands. So remember this. Sometimes you just got to state what you're going to do with your enemies. State what you're going to do and do it. And tactic number 3 is fight and slay your Goliath, so that everyone who is watching knows how powerful Yah is. He can help them too. Now we'll go to Nabal or Nabal. Nabal was a rich man who owned a bunch of land, and David and his soldiers were protecting this land, and he came into some hard times. He and his soldiers came into his hard times, and he went to Nabal and asked for some assistance. Now, think about this. Sometimes even righteous people fall into hard times. They fall into need and want. And this is exactly what happened. He asked Nabal for help. So Yah provides. Yah always provides. When you have times when you fall short financially and you need help, and Yah will give it, even if he has to use somebody who is disagreeable. So in 1 Samuel chapter 25, verse 8, I'm paraphrasing here, he says, "We have worked near your men. We have never asked for anything before. Please help us out with anything that you can spare." And Nabal replied angrily. He says, "I don't know what He says, "I don't know who this David is. I'm not going to give him nothing." Now, I don't know exactly what David expected from Nabal, other than food and water and some help. But he got more than he asked for, because he got Nabal's wife. Because shortly, we'll find out later on that Nabal died, but Abigail took it upon herself. She took 200 loaves of bread, 2 wineskins full of wine, 5 sheep ready to be cooked, a bushel of roasted grain, 100 raisin cakes, 200 fig cakes. And he brought them all down to David. So David got his blessing. David got his financial needs and his, in his belly full and everything that he needed, regardless of Nabal. So David sent 400 men to slay Nabal and his household. And Abigail met them on the way. But David was so angry at what Nabal said that he said, "May Yah punish me, even when morning comes, even if there is so much as one male of his people still living." Now, I don't condone what David did. I don't condone what he tried to do. I don't condone his attitude. But sometimes you gotta stick up for yourself as a righteous man of Yah, because people are watching. Sometimes we're told, turn the other cheek and just let people walk all over us. And there is a time and place for that. You let it slide. But in this, but not always. So what I'm talking about, what David did, is you stick up for yourself, and you don't be a doormat, because you're a child of Yah. So what happens is Nabal gets very drunk. This is 1 Samuel chapter 25, verses 36 through 40. Nabal gets very, very drunk, and he has a heart attack. And he falls into a coma, and he dies 10 days later. Now, remember this. Sometimes, no matter what you do, Yah will take care of things, and he will actually slay your enemy for you, Remember that. Remember that, because sometimes in our flesh, sometimes we want to take it. We get so angry when we want to just take care of something. We want to take care of that. I mean, we want to do it ourselves. We don't want to wait for Yah, and it's understandable. But at the end of the day, you got to remember that Yah ultimately is in control, and He will deal with His enemy, and you can do a no mea culpa. You just sit back and say, "Hey, not my fault. God did this." So the next enemy that I want to talk about is Saul. Everybody knows about King Saul and how his hatred towards David because of the relationship that David had with Yah. So we're going to 1 Samuel chapter 18, verses 11 and 12. Saul cast the javelin, for he said, "I will smite David to the wall with it." And David avoided out of his presence twice. And Saul was afraid of David because Yah was with him and was departed from Saul. Excuse me. Enemies, just remember this, enemies who envy your success, that is, your close relationship with Yah, they will do anything that they can to harm you. They might not try to kill you per se, but they might try to try to get you fired from your job. They might try to intervene in your marriage and get you and your spouse split up. They might just, slash your tires on your car or something, just some wicked things. They don't necessarily have to try to kill you, is the point, but they will try to do whatever they can to break your spirit. So, but just remember, again, Yah is in control, and He is the one who will give you strength to keep going on and keep going on. So keep moving forward. We're reading from 1 Samuel chapter 24, verses 3 and 4, and here I'm paraphrasing for time. Saul went into a cave where David was to relieve himself. David's men said to him, "Now is the time that Yah said to you, I will give your enemy into your hands to do with him whatever seems good to you." David instead cut off the end of Saul's robe. Now, just remember this. Don't necessarily listen to what your friends say about what to do to your enemies, because some people will say, "Yeah, you be a man and you go and take care of this, and if you don't, I'll do it for you." Well, again, there is a time and place for that, but sometimes you just gotta, it's not okay to go after your enemy. Sometimes it's not okay to go after your enemy and do with him what you will. Sometimes you just gotta prove that you could. And that's exactly what David did. He cut off the corner of David's robe, and to prove to him, "Hey, I was here. I could have killed you, but I didn't." And the reason for that is because David wanted to show that he was the bigger person. He wanted to show that he had restraint where Saul didn't. And this is the perfect example. I mean, and he put Saul in his place, really, by doing that. So next we'll move on to 1 Samuel 24, verse 17. Saul says, a bunch of compliments about David there. He says, verse 17, "You're more righteous than I." Verse 19, "Yah will reward you well." Verse 20, "I know well that you will be king." So in this verse, we see Saul looking very repentant and contrite, and he may have even felt it at the time. I don't know, but later on, he changed his accent, went back to his old ways, and he started, being wicked towards David again. But for here, he started acting, very, very repentant. So the point of all this is, your enemy might act repentant, But just watch. Just be, you believe the best about them, but be wise about it, because at the end of the day, you know, they can come back and do you harm, or try to. So ultimately, this is number 5. Ultimately, it's all about Yah, because really David believed, David loved and respected Yah so much that he accepted Saul as his king no matter what the circumstances, no matter how many times Saul tried to kill him or tried to weaken him or tried to break his spirit. David just believed the best about him because Yah had crowned Saul king. And even after Saul was dead, after he met an Amalekite man on the road who had killed Saul. Saul was already nearly dead anyway. He couldn't have survived the fall that he fell. So the Amalekite man killed him, and when this Amalekite relayed the story to David, David said to one of his men, he says, "You take your sword and you kill this guy because he killed the king." And so it is now with your enemies. At the end of the day, ultimately, you don't have to talk back to them. You don't have to cower down and turn the other cheek and be a doormat. You don't have to. At the end of the day, it's all about Yah. You do the right thing before Yah, and your enemies. Yah has promised in Proverbs chapter 16, verse 17. He says, "When a man's ways please the Most High, he will make even his enemies be at peace with him." So there it is. There's just a few examples of how to deal with your enemies in a righteous way, and I hope I've covered everything. If you have any questions or comments, or whatever, you leave them in the comments, and I'll try to answer them as much as possible. But just be righteous before Yah, especially with your enemies, because at the end of the day, think about this: whether you are Methodist or Muslim, whether you're Baptist or you're Buddhist or you're Hindu or you're Hebrew, you are a representative of your faith before other people. So be a good one. Shalom.